The Japanese role-playing game, or JRPG, has been a popular video game genre for a few decades. What started as a stripped-down console analog for old PC games like Wizardry and Ultima, eventually blossomed into an expansive genre all its own, with many new titles releasing every year. And to be clear, JRPG refers to a style of game, not necessarily the region it comes from. Not all Japanese RPGs come from Japan, and not all role-playing games made in Japan are JRPGs. Simple enough, right? But since the majority of these games come from Japan, they're often in close cultural proximity with anime. This means the two mediums often share cultural influences and influence each other. This is how JRPGs take influence from anime. In what's probably the most obvious aspect, JRPGs often borrow from anime in their visuals. This goes all the way back to the very first JRPG, the original Dragon Quest, which had art from famed anime/manga artist Akira Toriyama, who would then continue to work on the series until his untimely death. Rest in peace. JRPGs of the late 80s and early 90s, like Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star, and Chrono Trigger, would often incorporate anime-style drawings and/or sprites at some point, either in their concept art or on their title screens. With the advent of the 5th generation, things got a bit more advanced. Thanks to the PS1's shiny new disc drive, graphics could be a lot fancier, and Nintendo learned firsthand about technological inferiority. Of course, this also meant every Cloud, Faye, and Sergi now got a taste of those sweet, chunky polygons. But on top of that, Japanese devs now had new ways to imbue their anime games with a generous helping of authenticity. 3D action scenes, 2D animated cutscenes, and expressive character portraits were put to great use in games like Final Fantasy VII, Persona 2, and Xenogears, just to name a few. All these would go on to become staples of the genre, and still see heavy use today. Some PS1 games even incorporate voice acting, and while the results weren't always the best...
Reason for me to go on, what? What am I fighting for?
They certainly laid the groundwork for what was to come. Nowadays, most big-budget Japanese games get dubbed in both Japanese and English, and a lot of popular voice actors show up in their dubs. In the post-PS1 years, JRPGs would only look more anime. Besides Final Fantasy, funnily enough, with 3D character models often sharing styles with their 2D counterparts and popular anime artists still pitching in. The 2011 PS3 JRPG Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch even had art and animation done by the legendary Studio Ghibli. Every culture has its storytelling tropes, and Japan's no different. So it comes as no surprise that many JRPG stories take after those seen in anime. That said, Japanese culture still has quite a bit of stigma surrounding anime and the otaku, especially in older generations. On top of that, video games, especially RPGs, take a lot of time to play through, and Japanese adults tend to work long and grueling hours. So it's mostly Japanese teens playing these games, and since Japanese devs rarely focus on the Western market, JRPGs rarely target demographics older than teenagers. Combine that with most AAA games being made by and for men, and it's no wonder shonen anime is the prime candidate for getting gamified. Most JRPG protagonists are young boys who find themselves caught in some kind of large-scale conflict in a fantasy world. There are often similar character tropes, a lot of intense emotions, intense action, and similar humor, sometimes to mixed results. You could even argue they take after anime's episodic nature, as many of them are split into distinct chapters or arcs. But just like a lot of the most popular anime, a lot of JRPGs still do a lot to differentiate themselves, stylistically and narratively. For example, the worlds themselves often feature some sort of high concept. Xenoblade Chronicles takes place on the backs of two dead titans. Persona 4 involves a world within the TV where people's inner thoughts come to life. And Kingdom Hearts is the world's second most expensive Disney fanfiction. Even with the heavy shonen influence, JRPGs also use anime tropes to switch things up. incorporating common plot lines ranging from tournament arcs to beach episodes. Many ideas from popular anime also find their way into video game plot lines as a matter of cultural osmosis. Persona 3 and Xenogears are different flavors of, wow, this is just the plot of Evangelion. So, thanks, Anno, for inventing video games. Of course, there are plenty of exceptions. Some JRPGs take place in more grounded settings, or have female protagonists, or adult protagonists, or aren't even story-focused at all. But even those tend to have at least some things in common with the most popular ones. There's a reason Yakuza 7 constantly references Dragon Quest, after all. There's a bit more to discuss. Video games are expensive, especially in the AAA space, and that funding needs to come from somewhere. A lot of devs turn to microtransactions, but Japanese games also take a page out of their animator's survival kit. Merchandise. Japanese animation and gaming both rely heavily on merchandising for money. And just like anime, a major factor in this is the prominence of cute mascots. And waifus. That's why Pokemon is the highest grossing franchise on Earth, and why you can probably live exclusively off Persona 5 merchandise, if you're really that bored of life. And while JRPGs see tons of anime influence, they certainly aren't the only games to do so. You see a lot of it in visual novels, for example, and it's in tons of Japanese game series. From Berserk's influence on Dark Souls to the mecha genre influencing Metal Gear Solid.
It's like one of my Japanese animes.
Even so, it's certainly interesting to see the cultural overlap and how it's influenced some of my favorite games.